Hey beloveds, this is Adrienne, and today you're going to hear an episode of our beloved producer Zach's podcast, The Best Advice Show, and it's Autumn and I talking about how to make a go bag, which we think about a lot and sort of putting it in context of other things, but we thought you would really enjoy this too, so we're putting it in both feeds and hope that it is just a useful nudge in the direction of moving towards survival. Love y'all.
Hey, it's Zach. It's the Best Advice Show, where every episode I invite on different guests to give me some advice. As of today, Thursday, January 16th, the red flag fire warnings are expiring in LA. The winds are easing, but firefighters are still battling fires. At least 25 people have died. 100,000 have been displaced. Tens of thousands of acres have burned. And these past few days, it's really just settled in that nowhere is safe. We are living in a polycrisis. Some of us are dying in a polycrisis. And that's why today I want to talk to two of my favorite sisters from other misters. Actually, they're both from one mister, Adrienne and Autumn Brown. Together, they are the co-hosts of the beloved podcast, How to Survive the End of the World. The three of us started that show 7.5 years ago. There's over 200 episodes. If you haven't started listening yet, I encourage you to. The sisters just put out a really tender episode in the wake of the fires that is called The Solidarity of Unconditional Presence. Adrienne and Autumn are authors and artists. They're scholars of the visionary science fiction author Octavia Butler, whose book, Parable of the Sower, we'll draw from in today's episode, because it is hauntingly prescient. Octavia and Adrienne and Autumn have thought a lot about life in an emergency. And they're here today to talk about one thing we can all do, like now, to prepare for the unknown future. This episode is inspired by a How to Survive the End of the World listener, Emily, who wrote to us to say, I want to make a go bag, but have been stuck feeling like I don't know where to start. I've heard Adrienne loves to give advice on what to include, and I'd love to hear ideas from both sisters. Thank you for all you do. I am like Emily. I've been procrastinating on making a go bag since we started this show 7 years ago. Where did we start?
Yeah, Zach, I love you reading this question. I love Emily asking it. And I think Autumn and I both have a lot to offer.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of, I will get into a lot of the here's the technical stuff you need to get. Mm-hmm. But I think to back it up to the part that's I don't know where to start and I feel stuck. I think the majority of people I know are yeah, I know I probably need this. And I don't know. It's something about it. So I want to address that stuckness. I think part of what happens for people is they're if I prepare for this, then it's going to happen. Or if I prepare, I'm not going to remember it anyway. Or I don't know. There's just reasons why. I think just spend a little time on why you're stuck, right? Mm-hmm. And what it would mean to you to actually acknowledge the time we're in and the fact that this kind of bag makes sense. So
as LA burns.
As LA burns, I'm thinking I've had a go bag since probably my 20s. I've had a variation on it that was fairly sentimental, but I did my first one after reading Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. So for our listeners who are the magical listener who's what is a go bag? Octavia Butler was the first person I heard about this from, where it was a grab and go pack that her character, Lauren Olamina, keeps ready. And it has in it all these materials that are these are basic things that you want to have when you need to quickly run out of your house or quickly leave where you're going and you may never get to come back there. And you need to be able to survive with what you have on your back or what you can carry, right? So she puts a list of stuff in there, and hers was, she was living in Pasadena, California, the character is. And so what
That's eerie.
It's, everything that Octavia does is eerie.
Also Parable of the Sower very specifically predicted the events of this year of our lives, including Yeah, so
Yeah.
It's 2025. There's been a fire.
we're literally living through this prophecy right now. Yeah.
Saturday, June 7th, 2025. I finally assembled a small survival pack for myself, a grab-and-run pack. I've had to dig some things I need out of the garage and the attic so that no one complains about my taking things they need. I've collected a hatchet, for instance, and 2 small, light, all-metal pots. There's plenty of stuff like that around because no one throws anything away that has any possibility of someday being useful or saleable. I packed my few $100s in savings, almost $1,000. It might feed me for 2 weeks if I'm allowed to keep it, and if I'm very careful what I buy and where I buy it. I've kept up with prices, questioning Dad when he and the other neighborhood men do the essential shopping. Food prices are insane, always going up, never down. Everyone complains about them. I found an old canteen and a plastic bottle, both for water, and I resolved to keep them clean and full. I packed matches, a full change of clothing, including shoes in case I have to get up at night and run, comb, soap, toothbrush and toothpaste, tampons, toilet paper, bandages, pins, needles and thread, alcohol, aspirin, a couple of spoons and forks, a can opener, my pocket knife, packets of acorn flour, dried fruit, roasted nuts and edible seeds, dried milk, a little sugar and salt, my survival notes, several plastic storage bags, large and small, a lot of plantable raw seed, my journal, my earthseed notebook, and lengths of clothesline. I stowed all this in a pair of old pillowcases, one inside the other for strength. I rolled the pillowcases into a blanket pack and tied it with some of the clothesline so that I could grab it and run without losing things. But I made it easy to open at the top so that I could get my journal in and out, change the water to keep it fresh, and less often, change the food and check on the seed. The last thing I wanted to find out was that instead of carrying plantable seed or edible food, I had a load of bugs and worms.
For most people, what you need to have is some forms of identification, some cash, some key photos. And these are things my recommendation is to make copies or to even laminate copies. I have a set of pictures that's one of my tasks that I'm doing this month is there's a set of pictures I want to laminate that they're already in the go bag, but I'm like, oh, I want to laminate these now that I've seen what flooding can do. And I've also been thinking about adding a fireproof component to my go bag of like, getting a little envelope that's fireproof or something like that or is like more fire resistant. I'll say, I just want to share like what I have now. I'm a Southern dweller. I live in a place with a garage and I live in a place with a car.
Yeah.
Having watched the hurricane season and the fires and everything else, one of the new practices that's not a go bag, but something I'm doing all the time is I keep my gas tank above 3/4 full. So that way, if there's an emergency and I need to go, I'm not stuck in the lines trying to fight with people for the limited gas reserves that are there.
You're saying you never let it go under 3/4?
I try not to let it go under 3/4, just when I'm like around town. So like if I drive, a longer drive, obviously I'll let it go further. But when I'm just like, I'm sitting here and my car's in the front, I try to keep it above 3/4 full so that I know I can, I can make it to my parents on that amount. So I'm like, I know that I would be able to get to the place that seems most important to me in those circumstances. And then in the garage, I have a bag and I finally just was like, why am I trying to make this myself? I ordered a survival pack online. And I just found one that had like a multi-use tool, water cleansing tablets, a life straw, all kinds of first aid materials in it, like all those kind of survival things. They're all in a small pack. Like I could hold it in my hand if I needed to, but I bought a bigger bag that I can carry on my back. So I have that survival pack. And then I have a solar radio. I have some space blankets and a tarp, and all of that stuff is just in this bag. I don't keep it in the car. I keep it in the garage so that I can run with it if I need to, though I don't run. But that way I'm like, I can just grab it and like whatever the circumstances are.
Yeah.
I also got a big box of MREs, meals that are ready to eat that just require adding warm water to them.
It's like dehydrated.
Yeah, it's just like all kinds of dehydrated, but there's supposedly nice meals that are like, would work for my diet.
You've never tried it?
No, not yet. I don't want to, I know that they're not going to taste good until I need them.
Okay.
Like I'm not, it's like airplane food or what I was like, no, it's not going to be good. But then if I'm hungry, then it's going to be great. And then I have a bunch of fire starting materials because I feel like that'll be the skill that I probably won't properly learn until I need to. And so I'm giving myself little cheats. Now, the resources I want to point people to, our friend YK Hong, who's YK Reborn on Instagram, has been posting lots of very basic prep lists that include stuff like your passports and those kind of documents, and keys. And like, if you need videos, if you think that there might be an insurance issue, taking videos, but they also offer workshops on how to prepare a Go Pack, and people can just very easily go to their Instagram, which is YK Reborn, and find out more. They have like short term, here's how to pack a quickie go bag if you're in a crisis state currently. Pack and not overpack.
Great.
Do you know how much it weighs?
You just reminded me. I actually have 2 bags. So I have one that goes on the back that's like about 25 pounds right now. That's the one that's the survival pack. And then I have a sentimental bag that goes on the front. That one has tarot decks. It has a couple of books that are really meaningful to me. That's where I keep the pictures. Just like the sentimental items of my life that feel very meaningful that I would want to have with me. And that bag is about 15 pounds. Mm-hmm. Now, the solar radio is not, I need to weigh that. I need to weigh the bag with the solar radio in there. And then if I added the food, that box of food, that would be more. But yeah, I think I'll just throw them in the baskets on the bike. There's circumstances where you have to go and there's circumstances where you have to stay. And I feel like there's like one of the things that when people think of go bags, I think they always think of like grabbing and running.
Right.
But sometimes it's like just survivor prep in general, like having a bag that's like, or having a place in your house where it's like, this is where the stuff is that I'm going to need for my survival. And this is not,
Yeah. Like Lauren, I remember, brought seeds. Lauren Alamina brought seeds.
Exactly. And, you have to be gathering seeds, but you also have to have a sense of like knowing what to do with the seeds. So I have people, that's the, I think a go bag and also having some community that you're in contact with, that you're like, okay, we're thinking about these things together, really helps.
Yeah. Can you describe how it came to be that you started meeting with people hyper locally who you might be with in the case of
when I lived in Detroit, I felt like I was already tapped into that. When I lived in Detroit, I lived in a house with a bunch of other people who shared values. Like we each had our own spaces within that building, but it was a bunch of people that I was like, we share values. Some of these folks are gardeners. Some of these folks, can fix things and do other stuff. But there was a real sense of like, oh, I kind of have a sense of who I would survive with, at least initially here. When I moved to Durham in the midst of the pandemic, I didn't have that automatic built-in community. I had friends, and I still do. I have a bunch of friends who I'm like, okay, these are people that I love and care about. Yeah. But not necessarily the people I would turn to for or just automatically think like, can I count on you for this? So I realized like I really wanted that. Yes. And especially when I was like, okay, now I'm here by myself. I really want to need that. So then I reached out explicitly to some people who are, one person I was like, this person is like the person who knows how to farm and build things. This person is building Black community and Black network. So I know that I want to start with them. And then there's other people, part of our practice is like, let's keep sitting down to talk with each other and inviting more people to the table. Because I think the more you at least have the conversation, that helps you orient to it. But like, yeah, if you listen to this and you take one step, like order the bag, order one thing to go in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add actually, was related to documentation or what physical documents, and especially in the wake of the LA fires, I think that this is something a lot of people are going to be thinking about. Like, if you're going to go through the process of printing and laminating documents, then ensuring that you have a copy of your property deed if you're a homeowner, or mortgage statements, things that show, if you're a homeowner, things that show evidence of the ownership of the asset will be important.
Why is that?
Because if that burns up in the fire, then you don't have evidence of your ownership. And especially if you're in the aftermath of a disaster where there's any kind of predatory practices happening amongst bankers, lenders, mortgage companies, you're going to have proof that you own.
But don't we have that online? Don't you have it online?
Some people do.
Yeah, like if you're older, you might not have that, or you might not know how to access it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And maybe the internet isn't going to be working. Who friggin' knows?
Exactly. Like the thing that we have
part.
to think about is, and one of the other things I was going to recommend is having actual printed local maps, because we don't know, you can't know or rely necessarily on the fact that GPS is going to be available to you. And a few other things I would just offer, oftentimes it's a good idea to have your go bag include bottled water and non-perishable foods, but even non-perishable foods do perish after a period of time or need to be refreshed. And so it's important to refresh those items every 6 months. Portable cell phone chargers, flashlights, a hand crank or battery powered radio is always a good idea, and extra batteries. And again, all of these things are things that can add up weight-wise. So, it's a good idea to kind of pick one or two things that are going to be important for you. Or if you're in a family, to have things split amongst different people's go bags.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Do you have multiple? Because since you have 3 kids.
This leads to the other thing I was going to say, is that one of the other things that I remember doing with my kids at the outset of the pandemic, and it was outside of the pandemic, but after the uprising, I realized that one of the things that we needed to do was practice leaving our home quickly. And so we ran a series of practice rounds of assuming that we didn't have ourselves packed, what would we need to do if we needed to leave our house and we had less than 5 minutes to get out of the house? And so I gave each of my kids a list of the kinds of things that they would need to make sure to grab. And then I would do a practice runs with them where we would set a timer, and then they would have to meet me outside of the back door with bags packed.
Yeah.
In under 5 minutes. And it was cool because it was also practicing something that is, if it happens, when it happens, it's going to be incredibly stressful. And as we all know, practicing things makes them less stressful.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a good thing to do, especially with children, especially right now, because, we're now over a year in watching this genocide unfold in Gaza, where all of these children are being put through these terrifying situations of continuous displacement, right? And I think for many of us as parents, we're thinking, anyone who's really conscious and looking around at the world, it's there but for the grace of God, right? It's that could be my family if the political conditions shift in some way. And so preparing our children for eventualities that none of us want to actually consider, I think is also really important.
Yeah.
The preparing us all to be under, how do we make decisions under stress? It's the OODA loop again.
It's the OODA loop.
Yeah, say what the OODA loop is.
Just as a reminder to our audience, we have an episode with from the Apocalypse miniseries from 2020 with this group called Queer Nature, and they really went over this in depth with us. But the OODA loop is a survival practice that's about how you make decisions in survival or disaster scenario, or in a situation where you're lost in the wilderness.
Yes.
And the OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, act. So it's breaking down into discrete steps under stress, and in a situation where there's lostness or confusion and there's a need to do wayfinding or to make decisions quickly but also safely. We stop. We actually pause and observe our surroundings. We orient to landmarks, or we orient to the information that we need in order to be able to make a decision. Then we make a decision, and then we act on the decision that we've made. So breaking it down into those discrete steps is actually really helpful in terms of making responsible decisions under stress.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I think the only other thing I would add is really think locally, so in each area, there's different things that we face. So if you're in the South right now, hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, drought, right now it's colder than it's been. And when I lived in Detroit, the kind of cold that we're experiencing here would not be a crisis. Here, it's a crisis. The infrastructure is not set up to support this, when it gets really cold, when it gets snowy, when it gets icy, whatever. But thinking about where you are, like if you are in most places, it would be good to have high level masks available just in case. But definitely if you're on the West Coast, I'd say from the Midwest out to the West, just those fires and the air quality are going to continue to get worse and worse. And if you're on the East Coast, if you're on any coast, flooding is one of the big things. So it's like, oh, how am I waterproofing anything that I'm packing? Could I, if I needed to swim with this bag on me, would I be able to do that and make it somewhere and have those things still matter and still be intact? Which is part of why I like the pre-ordered survival bags. They a lot of the stuff is like sealed and closed in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then, change your whole life and just watch a ton of sci-fi movies and like you'll get it together. You'll figure it out. Yeah.
Great. Emily, thank you so much for asking that. I know that you and I aren't the only ones thinking about that now, not more than ever. I want to thank Lucie Putnam for reading the part of Lauren Olamina in that excerpt of Parable of the Sower, which if you haven't read yet, now is a really good time. That OODA Loop episode that Autumn mentioned from How to Survive the End of the World, that's linked in our show notes. I also linked to YK Hong, the liberatory strategist Adrian mentioned in this episode, as well as a link to some Go Bag essentials you should consider. It's all in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your thoughts on Go Bags and any advice you have about living through emergencies. Call me anytime on the hotline, 844-935-BEST. That's 844-935-BEST. I hope you and your people are safe. Wait, sorry, before I go, Adrian has one more thing to add. She can't contain herself. Here's a little extra advice.
One more thing that keeps coming to mind since we recorded that I just want to put on here. For a lot of people, it's really hard to get going. We talked about that for all kinds of reasons. And one other thing that I have found really helpful is I have a little list on my phone of things that are in my home that I want to live with every day. I don't want them in a go bag waiting to go somewhere. There's certain photos, there's certain books, there's certain tarot decks. There's just key things that I've run myself a drill a couple of times that I know that if I had 10 minutes, I could move through the house, gather these things, and there's room for them in the bag. Or I could just grab another canvas bag or whatever, if I needed to. But that even could be a step that some of you could take, is just creating the list of what are the things that really matter to me. And if you're not sure, then just run the drill without a list. Just say, oh, I just found out I have 10 minutes until something happens and I've got to be out of the house, or I've got to have grabbed everything that matters and tucked myself into the closet, or, whatever the scenario is, and just see what you grab, see what matters to you, and let that inform what matters to you, let that inform what it shapes. And then, I want to keep coming back to this other piece of wisdom, which is it really matters if you know how to use what's in your pack. So get together with other community and make sure that some of you have CPR skills, some of you have first aid skills, some of you have gardening skills, some of you have food preparation skills, and some of you have medical ongoing care skills, and lots of you have facilitation and mediation and good listening and friend and doula skills, because so much of what we have to do right now is just be with each other through change. Okay, I promise to leave it. This is enough. Love y'all. Read Octavia.